Carol, one of the things that I think that we probably have a common agreement with is that, the Bible tells us that we're supposed to teach our children and our grandchildren. Deuteronomy
Yes.
4, verse 9, I think it is. Make sure to teach your children and your children's children. And it's very important that grandparents have a role in their grandchildren's lives. It gives them an identity. It gives them a sense of history, tradition, even a sense of security. And I think that you'll agree that grandparents are very important in their children's lives. Can you tell us a little bit about how your perspective on this, or how important your grandparents were in your life, or anything along those lines?
Oh, well, my grandmother was very important to me. My grandfather died when I was quite young, and they came over from Italy. And so my mother was a real clean person and everything. She didn't like to teach me much about cooking. And my grandmother taught me everything about cooking. She taught me everything about our Italian lifestyle and all of that. She was very important. And she had 60-something grandchildren.
60?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And she taught us all.
Wow.
Every one of us. And without my grandmother's backbone to come over here with my grandfather and some of their kids they had at the time, none of us would have learned what we do. And we know all of our past. We know things we probably shouldn't know, but we know a lot. And Grandma had a jovial personality, and she just left it with all of us.
Yeah.
And every one of the 60 grandkids will tell you, I was most important.
Yeah, exactly.
I was
exactly.
most important.
I've sort of heard about some of these times that a grandparent would say, "You're my favorite, but don't tell anybody."
That's what she
and they would tell
always
me.
said. She always did that. And she said, if I had $1 million, because I was the only one that was an only child, she said, if I have $1 million, I would take you and we'd run away. And I would always laugh. But yeah, she made us all feel like we were important. And without Grandma, I had a wonderful mom, don't get me wrong. But without Grandma, I wouldn't have learned a lot of the things that I learned. And she died before she got to meet my son. So that was hard. But she was good. And in my own experience as a grandparent, I feel like I've been able to set certain, I don't know, not rules, but certain lifestyles with our granddaughters, both of them, that are different
Right.
from what the parents are going to set with them
Right.
and teach them. I haven't done so much this one, but the other one, the Bible was very important to me, and I raised my son on it, and I wanted to raise the grandgirls on it.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that we set a standard that the parents don't.
Right.
It
Right.
may not be the standard they want us to set, and then we spoil them rotten,
Yeah. Yeah.
And we cook for them, and we bake for them, and like the one down in Texas, we send things to her all the time.
Yeah.
Without a grandparent, your life is kind of empty.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was Rudolph Giuliani who talked about grandparents. He said all these great things that grandparents do, but most importantly, they bring cookies.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and the idea that we spoil our grandchildren, we're not undermining a parent
No.
at all. But I remember reading this one article from this lady, and her mother-in-law had died, and her regret was, please come back and spoil your grandchildren, because she said, I knew that when they were with you, they were loved in a way that I couldn't do it.
That's true.
And we do love in a different way. But she was saying, please come back. And she was so much against it at the beginning. You're spoiling my kids, you're doing that. And then when Grandma was gone, she's like, please, is there any way that you could come back and do that?
And so many people will have that regret. They will.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what I'd call a bad grandparent.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't.
Right.
I know there are probably a few, but in the end, they've got something to give. Whether it's ancestry, whether it's cooking,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's teaching them to sew.
Right.
I mean, it's nothing, it's not the same thing for everybody.
Right.
But we have something to offer. Plus, we're old.
Right.
We're so old, and we've lived on this
Yeah.
earth for, like me, I've lived here 69 years. So I've been through life, and I can teach life because I've been there.
Yeah.
Not much I haven't seen.
Yeah.
And probably not a whole lot more that I won't see. Obviously we're seeing a lot now.
Right.
But I want them to be stable in their beliefs. I want them to know that no matter what, and I have told my granddaughter in Texas this, no matter what happens, if you don't go to your mother, you've got me.
Right.
You know, mom and dad first.
Yeah.
And if they don't handle it, then you come to me. Or if you're afraid.
Right.
You know, I learned this. I have step-grandchildren.
Right.
I do. They're all grown up.
Right.
And they're all precious to me, too. But those girls were given the same advice.
Right.
If you get in trouble or if you're out somewhere, you call Grammy.
Right.
You know, you call me and I'll be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we do. Parents don't think, they just ask questions.
Yeah.
Why are you in trouble? Where are you at? Why are you there?
Right.
Grandparents will not do that because we've already been there with their parents.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that. And we're going to pick them up and we're going to make it okay.
Yeah.
As best we can.
And I think that, you know, when you're talking about this, what it also reminds me of is that if we had grandparents very actively involved in grandchildren's lives, we probably would be able to get rid of a lot of the remedial schools. We probably would get rid of probably keep a lot of people out of prison even. What are your thoughts about that?
I think so. And two, we would be able to keep them out of daycares.
Mm-hmm.
We would be able to keep them out of after-school activities that are not always the best for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm for sports, don't get me wrong. I think sports are great. But sometimes there's activities that kids, they just make them up as they go along because they don't have anything else to do with the kids.
Right.
They don't know what to do with them.
Right.
We can do that. We can take the plays. We can pick them up from school. We can have activities. We can get them to their sports if they have to. We can do all of that. And then the mother and dad aren't so stressed.
Right.
Because they're going to stress out, which stresses the kids out, which causes all the problems.
Right. Right.
And then they get divorced.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's kind of what happens.
Well, you know, and during the divorce, what the children need is stability. And unfettered access to grandparents will often provide that. Because the grandparents, you know as a grandparent, you love your children. But I think you've got probably a special, maybe even a deeper type of love, perhaps, for your grandchildren.
Yeah, it's different. You love them as much, but not the same.
Right.
I had to discipline my son. I don't have to discipline my granddaughters. I do, but it's not the same. I was trying to raise him to be the best man he could be. They have parents.
Right.
And those parents need to learn the right way to raise them. But me, with grandparents, we get to do the extra spoiling, the extra giving, and go the extra mile. We save the money for them to have special things that maybe mom and dad can't do.
Right.
Like my granddaughter down in Texas, we fly her all the time.
Right.
I don't even fly myself.
Right.
But I hate it, but she loves to fly. We just do things, we're part of their lives that is extended.
Yeah.
Like mom has her place, dad has his place, and we have our place.
Right.
And here with us, she's always been stable.
Right.
We've always lived in the same place.
Yeah.
We've lived in this home 6 years, so she was 3. And that's stability for her.
Right.
She does, and she always asks, "You're not going to move, are you? You're not going to move, are you?" We've moved once since she was born.
Mm-hmm.
And that affects children.
Right. Right.
Moving to a new home every year or every 2 years or 3 years is not good for them.
Right.
So we provide stability.
Right, and especially when you're talking about a divorce situation that occurs, there's a lot of instability.
Yeah.
And you can be that safe haven, that stable person, that stable home during those times.
Yeah, and plus I've been married almost 37 years, and they haven't seen that.
Right.
So they can see, well, they're still together even if they don't like each other sometimes, because, she thinks Grammy and Papa are crazy. And we probably do seem crazy to her.
Yeah.
But we're us.
Yeah.
We're just who we are.
Well, there's a big difference between good crazy and bad crazy, and there's too much bad crazy right now.
Yeah, and we don't have the bad crazy going on.
Yeah.
We just, we speak our mind, we give advice. A lot of it isn't listened to, but we give advice. But the most important thing I can say about people that have to fight for their grandkids and need to be fighting for their grandkids is pray. Pray over them. If we don't pray for our grandchildren every morning and every night, with the schools, with the system, with everything that's going on, we're going to lose our kids.
Right.
Both the grandkids and the great-grandkids that'll come along, we're going to lose them. I mean, that's opened right there.
Right.
And that bothers me all the time. And parents who do this to the grandparents need to be shook up a little bit. And I know many of them because I have many friends. You're giving your children the wrong example of what should be done with families.
Right.
They need to be together. They need to be stable. Even if your marriage wasn't stable and you went separate ways, fine. But give them some stability with the grandparents.
Right. And you know, one of the great examples that I see today, Simone Biles, the gymnast, she was reared by her grandparents.
Yeah.
And
look what she did.
Yeah.
You know, look what they do. And we push in a different way because mom is tired when she gets home from work or whatever. Or dad is whatever, tired. You know, they're tired. They just don't have that time. And grandparents will push.
Right.
Like my grandmother did push me on certain things to sew. And I hated sewing.
Yeah.
But she pushed me. And to this day, these kids have something that needs sewn. It's sewn.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how to use anything, but I do know how to sew.
Yeah.
It's that we just teach them things that mom and dad don't do anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, with the grandparents, I remember growing up because my grandparents, I loved going to their house. You know, my grandmother, you talked about a couple of things, but my grandmother always had the penny jar, and there was always a quarter each week plus the pennies, and we always knew where that was. And the M&M jar always had M&Ms in it, and the cookie jar was always full, or at least, you know, full enough for us. So the first thing we'd go running into the house. And I mean, I'm 8, 9 years old or something like that. And we go to the penny jar, so we have to divide things out because everything was done evenly so that everybody would have the same amount. And then we can get M&Ms, and then we can go to the cookie jar. And, you know, on Saturdays, I used to go bowling with my grandfather. I had an uncle who had Down syndromes, and he would take us up to the bowling alley, and we'd bowl up there. Then we'd go back and we'd eat beans and wieners at the house. But, you know, there's something about those memories that you can't replace.
No, that lasts forever.
And it's such a shame when you have children that are not being allowed to form those memories with their grandparents.
That's true. And see, even though I was one of 60, I got to form them.
Right.
You know, she was there. After my grandfather died, my grandmother stayed a month. She had 13 kids. And she stayed a month with each one. And then she would start over the next year with the 13th child. And so that's how it worked. So that's how we all got close to Grandma.
Wow.
Because all of the kids said, you will not live alone, because she lived in Jersey on the ocean. And she was 64 years old or 65 when he passed away. And that's what she did. Yeah. She lived a month with each child, and we all got a month with our grandmother.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, you mentioned this right now, because I think that during COVID, I saw some things happen to grandparents that I thought was horrible when they'd be in a nursing home and the grandchildren weren't allowed to see them.